The bells of Paris tolled in the chill morning air, their echoes rolling over the rooftops like ripples on the Seine. The city stirred slowly, merchants raising their shutters, students gathering their parchments, priests murmuring prayers in shadowed cloisters. Paris in the 12th century was not only the heart of France, it was the beating center of learning in all of Europe. And at the very center of this world of philosophy and theology stood Peter Abelard. Tall, sharp-eyed, and commanding in presence, Abelard was already a legend in his own time. He had challenged teachers, out-argued masters, and drawn crowds of eager students to hear his lectures at the Cathedral School of Notre Dame. His voice carried like music, weaving logic into beauty, reason into fire. To the young men of Paris, he was not just a teacher but a figure of brilliance, daring, and controversy. Yet behind the applause of students and the hum of debate, Abelard carried a loneliness known only to himself. He had chosen the path of intellect over the path of the heart, or so he thought. It was a chance arrangement that would set his fate upon a new course. In a quiet house near the cloisters lived Heloise, the niece of Canon Fulbert, a man of wealth and position in the church. Heloise was young, yet her reputation had already reached the lips of scholars and priests alike. She was said to be learned in Greek and Latin, and some whispered even Hebrew, an almost unheard-of education for a woman. Her beauty was spoken of with equal reverence. Dark eyes that seemed to hold questions unspoken, a face of both softness and strength, and a voice that could still a restless room. Canon Fulbert, proud of his niece's brilliance, sought a tutor worthy of her talents. Who better than Abelard, the famed master of Paris? He approached the philosopher with an offer, to live in his house, to instruct Heloise in the arts of philosophy and letters. Abelard, flattered and intrigued, accepted. And so one winter evening, Abelard crossed the threshold of Fulbert's house. The fire crackled in the hearth, and there by its glow sat Heloise, her hands resting upon a book of Virgil. She looked up as Abelard entered, her eyes meeting his with a calmness that startled him. "Master Abelard," she said softly, rising with grace. "It is an honor." Her voice carried neither shyness nor fear. Instead, it held the quiet confidence of one who knew her mind. Abelard bowed slightly, though his own heart quickened in his chest. "The honor is mine, lady," he replied. "Your reputation has already traveled farther than many men's careers. I am eager to learn whether rumor speaks true." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we shall see which is stronger, your teaching or my mind to receive it." Fulbert, watching from the side, laughed heartily. "You see, Master Abelard, she is not easily humbled. I trust you will make her so, in time." But Abelard, as he met Heloise's steady gaze, was not sure he wished to humble her at all. That evening marked the beginning of their lessons. Abelard took up residence in Fulbert's house, his chamber only a corridor away from Heloise. By day, he guided her through the writings of Aristotle, the verses of the poets, the mysteries of theology. By night, he found himself unable to banish her image from his thoughts. It was not merely her beauty that unsettled him, though that alone was enough to trouble the vows of a man who once leaned toward the priesthood. It was her mind, quick, sharp, questioning, alive. She challenged him with every passage, every argument, daring to disagree where others bowed in silence. One evening, as winter melted into spring, Abelard lingered over a passage of Ovid with her. The candles burned low, the shadows stretched long, and Heloise leaned closer to follow the lines he pointed to. Her hair brushed his shoulder. Her breath was near enough to warm his cheek. Their eyes met in the flickering light. For a long moment, the world of philosophy, of scripture, of duty, faded into silence. Abelard's heart thudded with a force he had not known in years. Heloise, too, felt the stillness between them, the unspoken current that bound pupil and master in a dangerous closeness. She looked away quickly, turning back to the page, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. That night, alone in his chamber, Abelard walked the floor in restless thought. He knew the peril of desire. He knew the vows of chastity expected of a scholar, the trust Fulbert had placed in him, the ruin that could come of yielding to temptation. And yet, he could not forget the brilliance in her eyes, nor the way his name sounded on her lips. "I must master myself," he told the silent walls. "I must be philosopher first, and man second." But the walls gave no answer, And in his heart Abelard knew, the struggle had already begun. The days in Canon Fulbert's household began to follow a rhythm. Morning bells from the cathedral called the city awake. The courtyard filled with the shuffle of students and clerics, and soon after, Abelard and Heloise would meet among their books. Abelard brought with him the weight of centuries: Plato and Aristotle, Cicero and Augustine, Boethius and Ovid. He spoke with a precision that could cut like a blade, yet with a passion that lit the words into fire. Heloise, far from being a silent vessel to receive his teaching, absorbed his lessons with hungry intelligence. She questioned everything. "Master," she said one morning as Abelard recited a passage of Aristotle, "if the pursuit of knowledge is the highest good, why then do so many fear it when it comes from the lips of a woman?" Her eyes challenged him openly. Abelard set his parchment aside, studying her expression. The sunlight streaming through the high window caught in her dark hair, haloing her in gold. "Because," he said slowly, "knowledge gives power. And power, when it appears in unexpected hands, unsettles those who would keep it for themselves." Heloise tilted her head, considering. "Then am I wrong to seek it? Should I bow to the comfort of men who fear what I might know?" Abelard felt a stir of admiration, and something deeper, more dangerous. He ought to have counselled her humility, reminded her of obedience, of the order of the world. Yet his heart leapt at her defiance. "No," he answered, his voice lower now. "To seek knowledge is never wrong. But it is a path that demands courage. More courage, perhaps, for you than for any man in this city." For a moment, silence hung between them. Heloise's lips parted as if to speak, but she said nothing. Instead, she bent her gaze back to the parchment, though her thoughts wandered far from the text. As weeks passed, Abelard noticed changes in himself. Where once he would retreat to solitude after lessons, now he lingered. Where once his thoughts were filled with disputations and logic, now they circled endlessly around the shape of Heloise's face, the sound of her laughter, the sharpness of her mind. He began to read passages aloud with an edge of softness, savoring the way her eyes followed the movement of his lips. He found excuses to correct her hand as she wrote, his fingers brushing hers in the briefest contact. He discovered, with both dread and delight, that his philosophy could not shield him from the pull of human desire. One evening, as spring rain drummed gently against the shutters, Heloise lingered after their lesson. Abelard closed the book they had been studying and looked at her across the table. "You are restless tonight," he observed. Heloise hesitated, her hands tightening upon the edge of her parchment. "I have been thinking about Ovid." A faint smile touched Abelard's lips. "Ah, dangerous thoughts. Which lines?" She met his gaze steadily. "The ones where he writes, 'Love is a kind of war.'" The word struck Abelard more deeply than any disputation. He leaned forward slightly, his heart quickening. "And do you believe that to be true?" he asked. Heloise held his gaze, unflinching. "I do not yet know, master. Perhaps you might teach me." The air between them thickened with unspoken meaning. Abelard felt the boundaries of reason crumbling within him. He should have ended the lesson, should have walked away. But her eyes, bright, searching, fearless, pulled him into a current stronger than any philosophy. He rose slowly from his seat. Heloise's breath caught, though she did not move. For a moment, they stood as two figures caught between worlds, teacher and pupil, philosopher and woman, mind and heart. Then Abelard spoke, his voice trembling with restraint. "If love is a war, Heloise, then I fear I am already defeated." Her lips parted, and the faintest flush rose to her cheeks. Yet she answered with a whisper, "Then perhaps, master, we shall be conquered together." That night Abelard lay awake in his chamber, every word and glance replaying in his mind. He knew the abyss he was approaching. A scandal would ruin them both. Fulbert's trust would be shattered, the church's wrath certain. And yet, for the first time in years, Abelard felt alive not as a philosopher but as a man. In the quiet dark, he whispered her name, Heloise, and felt its weight settle into his soul like a vow. The days grew warmer as spring spread across Paris. The Seine glittered under the sunlight, and the streets filled with merchants, pilgrims, and scholars. Yet within the walls of Canon Fulbert's house, another season was unfolding. one that no calendar marked, one written only in glances and silences. Heloise's lessons had become more than exercises of the mind. Abelard felt it every time her hand brushed the parchment, every time her voice recited a line with a quiet intensity that seemed meant for him alone. And Heloise, for her part, noticed how his stern gaze lingered a fraction longer than propriety allowed, how his voice softened when speaking her name. One late afternoon, as dusk painted the sky in rose and violet, they sat together over a passage of Ovid. Abelard had chosen the lines carefully, hoping perhaps to test her, perhaps to test himself. Love is no art to the careless heart. It burns, consumes, and teaches through fire. Heloise read the words aloud, her voice steady though her cheeks warmed. She lowered the parchment and looked at Abelard. "Do you believe this, master?" she asked. Abelard hesitated. Logic told him to deflect, to turn the question into abstraction. But his heart betrayed him. "I believe," he said slowly, "that love is a fire one cannot master. A man may think himself wise, armored with reason, yet a single spark can undo him." Their eyes met across the table. Heloise's breath quickened. She felt as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. "Then tell me," she whispered, "what spark has undone you?" The words hung in the air like a challenge, bold and trembling. Abelard's chest tightened. He ought to laugh it away, to remind her of her studies. But the restraint that had held for weeks broke in that instant. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. Her fingers curled instinctively around his own. "Heloise," he said, his voice unsteady, "you must know what I cannot hide. From the first day I saw you, your mind, your spirit, they have consumed me. I am a scholar undone, a man at war with himself." Her eyes widened, shining in the half-light. "You speak as though I hold power over you." "You do," Abelard confessed, pressing her hand to his lips. "And it terrifies me." For a heartbeat, Heloise said nothing. Then, with a courage born of passion, she leaned closer. "Then let us share the fire," she murmured. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with a hunger that neither had known could exist. Abelard's arms drew her close, the parchment scattering to the floor, forgotten. Heloise clung to him, her heart racing as if all her life had been leading to this moment. When at last they parted, breathless, Heloise rested her forehead against his chest. "I have feared this," she whispered. "Not because I did not want it, but because I wanted it too much." Abelard's hand stroked her hair, his heart pounding in unison with hers. "So have I. We walk a dangerous path, Heloise. But I cannot turn from it now, not when the fire has already taken hold." The days that followed became a secret world. Lessons turned to whispers, glances to touches. Abelard found excuses to remain long after Fulbert's household had gone to sleep. In the quiet hours of the night, Heloise and Abelard discovered a language beyond books, a language written in kisses, in trembling hands, in the desperate certainty that what they shared was both forbidden and inevitable. Yet even in passion, Heloise's mind remained sharp. One evening, lying beside Abelard as the city slept, she asked softly, "Do you regret it? Breaking your vows as a philosopher, risking your reputation?" Abelard turned to her, his face softened by candlelight. "Regret? No. For what is philosophy without the experience of life? You are the truth I have sought in every book, Heloise. You are my argument against despair." She smiled faintly, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Then perhaps Ovid was right. Love is not an art to the careless. It demands everything. Abelard kissed her hand, sealing the thought. "Then let it demand all of me. For I am already yours." But beyond the walls of their secret paradise, danger brewed. Servants noticed the long hours. Neighbors whispered of shadows moving late at night. And Canon Fulbert, though proud of his niece's brilliance, was not blind to the shifting air in his household. For now, though, Abelard and Heloise lived as though only the fire mattered. Their hearts had declared war against the world, and in those early months, it seemed nothing could defeat them. Paris lived in noise and daylight, but Heloise and Abelard lived in silence and shadow. What began as chance glances and whispered confessions now demanded stolen hours, as though time itself conspired to give them moments the world could not know. Each evening, Heloise waited for the creak of the stair that told her Abelard was near. Her heart leapt with every sound, her breath quickening in anticipation. And when at last he appeared, cloaked against the night, she felt the world fall away. "Every step I take toward this door," Abelard whispered one evening, "I ask myself if it is madness. And yet, the moment I see you, the madness becomes reason." Heloise smiled faintly as she drew him into her chamber. "Then let us be mad together. For what is reason if it means living without you?" They closed the door behind them, the faint glow of a single candle their only witness. Books lay forgotten on the table, parchment scattered as though lessons had been abandoned mid-thought. Their true study now was each other, the curve of a hand, the sound of a sigh, the unspoken poetry that bloomed in the dark. By day, they played their parts. Abelard taught with stern authority, his voice measured, his mind sharp. Heloise bent over her manuscripts, a picture of dutiful scholarship. But beneath the surface, their thoughts burned with secret knowledge. A brush of fingers when passing a parchment, the stolen smile when no one watched, these small rebellions sustained them until night returned. One afternoon, as they sat together over Aristotle, Heloise's hand brushed his beneath the table. Abelard did not flinch. Instead, he looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse race. "Your mind is brilliant," he said, his voice steady for those who might overhear, but his eyes telling another truth. "Yet even Aristotle would falter if he sat where I sit now." Heloise lowered her gaze, though a smile tugged at her lips. "Then let us keep his philosophy intact, and ours in silence." But silence was fragile. One evening, Abelard lingered longer than he intended. They had spoken of poetry, then drifted into laughter, then into silence that needed no words. Heloise lay beside him, her head resting against his shoulder, listening to the rhythm of his breath. "Do you fear discovery?" she asked softly. Abelard's arm tightened around her. "Yes. And yet I fear more the thought of losing this. To lose you would be to unlearn everything I have ever known." Heloise closed her eyes, savoring his words. "If discovery comes, let it. I would rather live 1 year with you in truth than a lifetime of safety without you." Her courage startled him, but it also inflamed him. He kissed her hair, her brow, her lips, as though sealing her vow with his own. But already, whispers crept through Fulbert's household. A servant noticed the creak of stairs in the night. Another saw Heloise's flushed cheeks in the morning light. The city of scholars was a city of gossip, and love, no matter how carefully hidden, has a way of making itself known. One night, as Abelard prepared to leave, Heloise caught his hand. "Promise me," she said, her voice trembling, "that whatever comes, you will not deny me. I could bear scandal, but not your silence." Abelard looked into her eyes, seeing not the timid student but a woman fierce with love. "Never," he vowed. "If the world turns against us, let it. I will stand with you, Heloise, even if it costs me everything." She kissed him then, with a passion that defied fear, as though sealing the words into eternity. And so the stolen hours continued, nights of fire, days of disguise. Their love was both their sanctuary and their peril. For though they believed themselves clever, the world beyond their chamber doors was listening. And soon, the shadows that protected them would turn to threats. The air in Paris carried secrets. Cobblestone streets echoed with footsteps and gossip alike, and nothing hidden remained so forever. For weeks, Abelard and Heloise had lived in their fragile paradise of stolen hours. To them, the night felt eternal, the candlelight endless, and their whispered promises indestructible. But outside those moments, eyes were watching, ears were listening, and suspicion was growing. Fulbert, Heloise's uncle, had long been proud of her brilliance. He boasted of her scholarship to his friends, telling them she surpassed many men in learning. But lately he noticed other things, a blush too quick upon her cheek, letters folded too carefully, sighs that escaped when she thought herself alone. One evening, Fulbert studied his niece as she read by the fire. Her eyes skimmed the parchment, but her lips curved faintly, as if smiling at words no one else could see. "Heloise," he said suddenly. She started, clutching the parchment as though it burned her. "Yes, uncle." "You seem distracted these days. Do your studies no longer hold your full attention? She forced a small laugh. On the contrary, uncle. They consume me. Fulbert's gaze lingered on her, searching for cracks in her composure. Good. For distraction is a dangerous companion. Especially for one in your position. Heloise lowered her eyes, hiding the storm that churned in her chest. She knew what he suspected, though perhaps not yet whom. Meanwhile, whispers began to stir among the servants. A maid once glimpsed Abelard's cloak disappearing into Heloise's chamber at night. A boy who carried water swore he heard low voices when there should have been silence. These were small murmurs, nothing more, yet in a house ruled by a man as watchful as Fulbert, small murmurs could become thunder. Abelard felt the change first. Your uncle watches me differently, he told Heloise one evening, as he drew her into his arms. The candle flickered between them, throwing shadows that seemed to tremble with unease. His eyes narrow when I enter, and I can almost hear his thoughts counting the hours I spend here. Heloise touched his cheek, her brow creased with worry. Then perhaps we should. No, Abelard's voice was firm. I will not surrender our time together to suspicion. If he doubts, let him. Our truth is greater than his fear. She wanted to believe him, and for a moment she did, leaning into his kiss, letting the warmth of his certainty drown her own unease. Yet when the night ended, and Abelard slipped back into the corridors, her heart thudded with dread. Days grew sharper with tension. Fulbert began asking questions that seemed innocent, but which pressed like knives against hidden truths. Abelard, he said one afternoon, catching the scholar in the courtyard. My niece speaks well of your lessons. Too well, perhaps. You give her much of your time, do you not? Abelard inclined his head with the calmness of a man who had argued with kings. Knowledge demands time, Fulbert. Your niece's mind is extraordinary. It would be a crime against learning to give her less. Fulbert studied him in silence, as though weighing every word for hidden meaning. That night, Heloise clung to Abelard with trembling hands. He suspects. I feel it. Every glance, every word, it is as if he peers into my heart, waiting to find you there. Abelard kissed her hair, though his own chest tightened. Then let him look. He will see only what we allow him. We are scholars, nothing more. The world will not believe otherwise unless we give it reason. But reason, she whispered, is what we abandoned long ago. Abelard pulled her closer, pressing his forehead against hers. Then we must be cleverer than reason. Our love is a flame in the dark, Heloise. We must guard it, shield it, even as it burns brighter than the sun. Yet guarding became harder. The stolen hours that once felt endless now carried a sharp edge of danger. Each creak of the stair, each knock upon the door, sent their hearts leaping in terror. What had once been thrilling now became perilous, though the passion remained unchanged. One night, as they sat in silence after a hurried embrace, Heloise whispered, Do you regret it? All of this, risk, danger, fear. Abelard turned to her, his face lit by the trembling flame. I regret nothing. If love is a crime, let the whole world know me guilty. For I would choose these hours with you over a lifetime of safety without you. Her eyes filled with tears, and she kissed him fiercely, as though sealing a promise against the growing storm. But outside their chamber, Fulbert's suspicion was hardening into certainty. And certainty, in a man so proud and protective, could be as dangerous as a sword. The shadows that had once hidden them were beginning to betray them. The secret, so carefully guarded, could not remain hidden forever. Love, especially the kind that burns so fiercely, leaves traces behind. Smiles that linger too long, glances too tender, words too carefully chosen. Fulbert was no fool. His house had begun to speak to him in murmurs. The servant girl who blushed and stammered when asked about Heloise's late nights, the doorkeeper who wondered aloud why Abelard's footsteps echoed in corridors meant to be silent, the parchments tucked too quickly into drawers when he entered. Each detail was a thread, and Fulbert, with growing fury, wove them into a net of suspicion. One evening, Heloise was reading in her chamber when the door burst open. Fulbert stood in the threshold, his face pale with rage. Heloise, he said, his voice trembling not with weakness but with the strain of barely contained wrath. Tell me the truth. What is Abelard to you? The parchment slipped from her hands. She tried to steady her breath, to cloak her trembling with dignity. "He is my tutor, my guide in philosophy and letters." Fulbert's eyes narrowed. "Do not insult me with lies. I see the truth in your face. Your cheeks burn when I speak his name. Your eyes betray you." Heloise lifted her chin, summoning the courage Abelard always admired. "And if my heart were bound to him, would that be a crime? You have always said my mind is free, uncle. Would you chain my soul as well?" Fulbert's voice rose. "You dare speak so to me? He has deceived you, stolen your innocence, brought shame to this house. By God, Heloise, you are ruined if you continue down this path." Her hands clenched at her sides. "I am not ruined, for love cannot ruin what it ennobles. Abelard has not deceived me. I have chosen him as freely as I choose my own breath." For a moment, silence thundered between them. Fulbert's face twisted with something between grief and fury. He turned sharply and left the chamber, but his footsteps struck the floor like hammer blows. Heloise sank onto her chair, heart pounding. The truth was no longer a secret whispered in the dark. It had escaped into the world, where it could not be recalled. Abelard came to her soon after, his cloak pulled close around him. He found Heloise pale, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "He knows," she whispered. "My uncle, he asked me. I could not deny it." Abelard's face hardened, though his hand gently took hers. "Then the storm has broken. We must stand against it together." What will he do? What all men do when they feel power slipping from their grasp: rage, threaten, scheme. But he cannot unmake what has been made. Our love exists, Heloise. It cannot be undone by anger. Yet in Abelard's heart, unease coiled like a serpent. He knew Fulbert's pride, his possessiveness, his hunger to control. Such a man, once humiliated, might reach for vengeance rather than reason. Fulbert's wrath did not burn quietly. He confided in friends, in clerics, in neighbors, spreading whispers that Abelard had seduced his innocent niece under the guise of scholarship. The story grew in the telling, each retelling sharpening the scandal. Soon Paris buzzed with rumors. Abelard, once admired as the brightest mind of his generation, now felt eyes follow him in the streets, some with pity, others with condemnation. "Philosopher of love, indeed," muttered a scholar in the market. "More like philosopher of lust." Abelard heard it, and his jaw clenched. Yet when he returned to Heloise, all the bitterness melted, for her gaze held none of the world's scorn, only steadfast devotion. "They will destroy you," she murmured one night, resting her head against his chest. "Your name, your reputation, everything you have built, they will tear it down because of me." "Because of us," Abelard corrected softly. "Do not take the blame alone. I chose this path as much as you did. If the world condemns me, so be it. Let them speak their venom. Their words cannot undo the truth of what we share." She lifted her eyes, shining with both fear and love. "And what if their punishment is not only words?" He held her tighter, as though he could shield her from fate itself. "Then I will endure it. For you, Heloise, I would endure the world's cruelty 1,000 times over." But the world's cruelty was closer than either imagined. Fulbert's anger did not rest in slander alone. He brooded, plotted, and waited, his heart aching with the thought that his niece, his brilliant, precious Heloise, had been stolen by the very man he had welcomed into his home. He swore to himself that Abelard would pay dearly. And though Heloise and Abelard still clung to one another in secret, their love, once a sanctuary, now felt surrounded by the encroaching steps of fate. The dawn was grey and silent over Paris, as though the city itself held its breath. Inside Canon Fulbert's house, silence was shattered by shouts and the hurried pounding of boots on the floor. Abelard, who had spent the night in quiet study, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. He opened the door to find a group of men, their faces set with grim determination. At their head stood Fulbert himself, eyes dark with fury. "Abelard!" Fulbert's voice cracked with rage. "You have betrayed every trust one placed in you. You have seduced my niece, defiled her honor, and brought shame upon this house. For this, you will pay." Abelard's chest tightened. He had anticipated anger, perhaps even exile, but he had not foreseen the raw, personal cruelty in Fulbert's eyes. "I have done nothing but love her," Abelard said evenly, though his heart pounded. "And she has returned that love freely. If there is shame, it lies not in the heart, but in those who cannot understand it." Fulbert's lips trembled with fury. "You dare lecture me on morality? You will learn, Abelard, that words cannot undo the offense you have committed." Before Abelard could respond, hands seized him. Heloise, drawn by the noise, appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Uncle," she cried. "You cannot." "Silence!" Fulbert bellowed. "This is not for you to witness, child. You have brought this upon yourself." Abelard struggled against the men holding him, but it was futile. Fulbert's plan was precise and brutal. In the courtyard, the men dragged him to a low stone wall, the chill air biting at his skin. Fulbert's eyes held both grief and vindictive satisfaction. "You have overstepped every boundary, every law, every trust," Fulbert spat. "Now you will feel the consequences." Abelard's mind raced, but only one thought held steady: Heloise. He had to endure this. For her, he would endure anything. The punishment was swift, horrific, and calculated. Abelard was castrated. The shock and pain were overwhelming, yet through it all, he did not scream. His gaze, though, never wavered from Heloise, who had been forced to watch from behind the barred window of her chamber. Her hands covered her mouth to stifle the cries that would not come, her knees weak, her heart shattering with every moment. When it was done, Abelard collapsed to the ground, blooded and broken, yet alive. His first words, whispered through gritted teeth, were not curses but a single name: Heloise. She ran to him as soon as she could, flinging herself against the wall of the chamber, tears streaming freely. "Abelard! My love! My life! How could he, why?" He reached for her hand, his fingers trembling. "Do not weep for me," he said, voice hoarse. "I endure this, for you. For our love. Let them think they have conquered, but they have not." Heloise shook her head, sobbing. "Conquered? They have taken everything from you. How can this be endured?" Abelard's eyes softened. "The body suffers, Heloise. But the soul, our soul, cannot be touched. We still have each other in mind, in heart, in letters. That they cannot steal." They clung to one another in the quiet chamber, the walls closing in around them, yet unable to reach the bond that neither pain nor cruelty could sever. Fulbert, watching from the distance, felt a fleeting pang of regret. But it was buried beneath anger and wounded pride. He had taught Abelard a lesson, yet he could not know that this act, intended to destroy, would forge the couple's love into something eternal. Abelard recovered slowly. His body bore the scars of cruelty, but his mind and heart became sharper, stronger. And Heloise, though stricken with grief, became even more determined to love, to preserve what remained of their connection. Letters became their lifeline. Every word exchanged between them carried the weight of longing, the fire of devotion, and the courage to endure a world that had turned against them. For in the silence of exile and the shadows of cruelty, their love, though altered, challenged, and tested, burned brighter than any scandal, any punishment, any obstacle imposed by man. Paris had returned to its rhythm, but for Heloise and Abelard, the world had shifted irreversibly. The night of Fulbert's cruel punishment remained etched in their minds, a wound too deep for time to erase. Abelard, though alive, bore not only physical scars but the weight of shattered dreams. Heloise, confined to her chamber, carried grief that seemed to pierce her very soul. Yet love, though battered, refused to die. Fulbert, in his anger and misplaced sense of protection, decided that the only way to contain the danger he believed Abelard posed was to place Heloise in a convent. There, she would be safe, removed from the scholar who had captured her heart and mind. Heloise's pleas were ignored. She embraced Abelard for what felt like the last time, her tears soaking the folds of his cloak. "Must we be torn apart?" she whispered. Abelard held her tightly, the lines of pain etched deep on his face. "We are separated in body, Heloise, but not in soul. Nothing can sever the bond we share, not walls, not distance, not the world itself." Her hands lingered on his face, memorizing every curve, every line, as if pressing his very essence into memory. "Then we shall write," she said, voice trembling. "Letters, Abelard. Let our words keep us together." He nodded, his lips brushing her hair. "Yes. Every day, every night, a letter. Let our love live in ink, for even stone walls cannot confine it." The first letters were cautious. Heloise wrote with trembling hands, careful not to reveal too much to the prioress or the other nuns, but pouring her heart onto the page nonetheless. Abelard responded with passion and intellect intertwined, recounting lectures, thoughts on philosophy, and always, always, words of love. "My Heloise," he wrote, "though the world has cast me into darkness, your mind illuminates every thought. Your love is the fire that guides me through despair. Write to me, and I shall feel you near, though leagues divide us." Heloise read the letter in the dim light of the convent, clutching it to her chest. "Yes, we are apart in body," she whispered to the empty room, "but never in spirit." Months passed. Letters became their lifeline, their secret sanctuary. They wrote of longing, of philosophical debates, of hope and fear. Abelard's words were a balm for her grief, while Heloise's insights inspired his thoughts as no scholar ever had. "Peter," she wrote, "I walk these cloistered halls and see only walls. Yet in every shadow, I feel your presence. Your mind, your voice, your love, they are my companions in this solitude." He replied, "Heloise, every line you write is a window through which I see your soul. Though the world has condemned us, it cannot command my heart. We are free, my love, free in thought and devotion." Their correspondence became legendary among scholars in later years, not for scandal, but for the intensity of intellect and emotion, a dialogue that transcended time and circumstance. Even in the confinement of convent life, Heloise's mind blossomed. She debated theology with nuns, studied scripture with rigor, and composed letters and poetry that astonished even Abelard. Their love was not only a bond of passion, it was a shared intellectual journey, each letter a testament to the depth of their minds as well as their hearts. Yet the pain of separation never fully eased. Heloise wrote with longing, her words sometimes trembling with tears, sometimes alight with the memory of stolen embraces. Abelard's replies carried both solace and subtle ache, revealing a man who, though diminished in body, remained untamed in spirit. "Do not despair, Heloise," he wrote one evening. "The walls may enclose your body, but your mind, your heart, are as vast as the heavens. We meet there, each night, in thought, in hope, in love." And so they endured. Days turned to months, months into years, yet the letters flowed unceasingly. Every word, every line, a thread tying their separated hearts together. Even in exile, even under the shadow of cruelty, their love became stronger, tempered by patience, intellect, and devotion. Heloise often paused, reading Abelard's letters aloud to herself in the dim candlelight. "He lives in my thoughts," she would whisper, "and I in his. And though the world forbids it, nothing can steal this." Abelard, in his modest chamber, held her words close, tracing her phrases with fingers trembling over the parchment. "We are eternal," he wrote. "Though walls divide, hearts unite. Though men betray, love endures." Thus, the cloister walls, meant to confine and punish, instead became the silent witnesses to a love that neither time nor cruelty could conquer. Paris slept beneath a sky brushed with stars, but Heloise and Abelard were awake in hearts and minds that spanned miles and walls. The cloister that held Heloise could not restrain her thoughts, nor could the chamber that confined Abelard restrain his pen. Every letter they wrote became a bridge across time and space, a testament to the intensity of a love that neither cruelty nor distance could diminish. Heloise wrote first, trembling as she folded the parchment. "My dearest Peter, in the silence of these walls, I hear your voice in every rustle of the wind. My mind wanders to you endlessly, to the warmth of your hand, the fire of your intellect. Each thought of you is both comfort and torment. Do you feel me as I feel you?" She sent it with the servant who carried words through the labyrinthine streets, hoping it would reach him before the night closed. Abelard, upon receiving the letter, read it slowly, savoring every line, letting each word press against the depths of his soul. He wrote in reply by candlelight, the ink trembling under his fingers, but his resolve unwavering. Heloise, your letters are the only light in my exile. I hold them as one holds a precious treasure, for in them I feel your mind, your spirit, your love. The world may separate our bodies, but it cannot divide our souls. Every thought of you is a revelation, every word a bond eternal. Thus began the cycle that would define the rest of their lives. Days and nights passed in a rhythm of longing and response. Each letter became a dialogue, a sacred exchange that entwined intellect with passion. They debated theology, philosophy, and morality, yet every argument, every point of logic, returned to the central truth of their hearts: they belonged to one another. Heloise's letters were at once tender and fiery. She challenged Abelard with questions that tested his reasoning, questioned the foundations of church dogma, and expressed her frustration at the injustice imposed upon them. Peter, how can men, blind in their pride, wield authority to crush what is pure and true? Do they not see that the intellect and the heart can coexist? That love, reason, and devotion are not enemies but allies? Abelard's replies matched her fervor, often with subtle humor, often with profound reflection. Heloise, they are blind, yes, yet their blindness cannot reach the light we share. Let the world rage and rail, we shall remain untouched in mind and spirit. Love is not a thing of the body alone. Ours is a communion of thought and soul, eternal in its devotion. The letters became sacred objects. Heloise would read and reread each one, tracing his words with her fingers, memorizing the cadence of his thoughts. Abelard, likewise, would hold her letters to his chest, feeling her presence through the ink. Years passed, yet the letters never waned in intensity. Even when Abelard took monastic vows, Heloise became a nun, they continued to write. Their correspondence carried the wisdom of scholars and the fire of lovers, weaving a tapestry of emotion and intellect that inspired all who would read it in centuries to come. My beloved Peter, Heloise wrote one night, though we are cloistered, though the world would see us divided, I feel your presence beside me always. Our love has become a law unto itself, a doctrine of the heart that no mortal can revoke. Abelard replied, Heloise, we have been exiled, chastised, separated by walls and vows. Yet no edict, no cruelty, no passage of time can dim the brilliance of what we share. Your mind illuminates mine. Your love fortifies me. Letters are our sanctuaries. Ink is our refuge. Through this, we live as one, beyond the reach of men or fate. The intensity of their correspondence made their love legendary. It was not only a tale of passion, but of intellect and devotion intertwined. Scholars and historians would later marvel at the clarity, depth, and eloquence of their letters, noting how a love once punished and forbidden endured across a lifetime. Heloise and Abelard wrote not only to express desire, but to teach, to challenge, to nurture the other's mind. Every letter was a dialogue of hearts and minds. Every word was a promise, a covenant that neither distance nor cruelty could break. Even as age approached, even as the world moved on, the letters remained their lifeline. They proved that love could survive punishment, separation, and time itself. What the body endured, the mind and spirit overcame. We are eternal, Abelard wrote in one final, heartfelt letter, because our love is not bound to flesh, not confined by walls, nor diminished by cruelty. In thought, in word, in soul, we remain together, now and always. Heloise read these words with tears streaming, her heart both heavy with sorrow and light with enduring joy. They had suffered, been punished, and exiled, but their love had transcended all. Years passed in the quiet rhythm of cloistered life. The world outside shifted. Paris grew, churches rose, and scholars came and went, but within the walls that contained Heloise and Abelard, time had another measure. It was counted in letters sent and received, in thoughts shared, in love nurtured across distance and circumstance. Abelard's body bore the permanent mark of Fulbert's cruelty, yet his mind remained undiminished. He taught, he wrote, and he reflected upon the nature of love, reason, and the human soul. Heloise, meanwhile, flourished as a scholar in her own right, her intellect unmatched, her spirit undaunted by monastic life. Though their bodies were denied the embrace of youth, their souls remained inseparable. They met in the mind, in letters, in prayer, and in quiet reflection, a communion that outlasted pain and scandal. Heloise wrote with the wisdom of years, each letter a testament to enduring love. My beloved Peter, time may have taken what the world values most, the flesh, the freedom of movement, but it has not taken you from my mind, nor my love from you. Every thought of you is a sanctuary, every memory a flame that burns brighter with the passing years. Let the world reckon with its judgments. We have endured, and endurance is the greatest triumph of love. Abelard replied with equal devotion, his words echoing both passion and reflection. Heloise, in every moment, your presence guides me. Though I am diminished in body, I am made whole by your intellect, your spirit, and the fire of your heart. The world may attempt to contain us in stone walls and social edicts, but our love exists in a realm they cannot touch. It is eternal, not because it is safe, but because it is true. Their correspondence, once a lifeline, had become a monument. Every letter a bridge across time, every thought an unbroken chain of devotion. Scholars in later generations would study their words not only for their philosophical insight but for the undying humanity they revealed, the courage to love fully, to challenge injustice, to intertwine intellect with heart. In the final years, when age and illness had begun to claim strength, they continued to write, each letter suffused with reverence and gratitude for a love that had survived every trial. Heloise's hand trembled less from ink and more from the passage of time, yet her words were no less precise, no less ardent. Abelard, in his modest chamber, kept each letter close, reading them aloud, savouring the echoes of a life shared in spirit. Peter, my love, Heloise wrote in her final letter, we have been tested by the cruelty of men, by exile, by time itself. Yet still, I find you in my thoughts, in every question I ask, in every answer I seek. Our love has become immortal, not in flesh, but in mind, in soul, in the legacy we leave for those who follow. Abelard's reply, sent with a hand both frail and unwavering, encapsulated a lifetime of devotion. Heloise, you are my eternal companion, my teacher, my heart. What men saw as tragedy, we transformed into triumph. Though the body suffers, the soul is unconquerable. We have loved beyond flesh, beyond cruelty, beyond time. Let the world remember us not for scandal, but for the courage to love and the wisdom to endure. Heloise and Abelard passed in different years, yet their love remained united in the letters they had exchanged, in the intellect they had shared, and in the legacy they had left. Future generations would discover their words and marvel at the depth of mind and heart that survived every cruelty, every obstacle. Their story became not just one of forbidden love, but of love as an act of courage, as a pursuit of truth, as a testament to the indomitable human spirit. In the end, the body was weak, the world cruel, and time fleeting, but their love endured, beyond flesh, beyond fear, beyond death itself.